So we'll talk about monolithic and microservices based architecture first, and we'll see where does this Istio fit into the picture. Okay, so monolithic architecture. We all know about the monolithic architecture. So let's say if you have a shopping application like your Amazon or Walmart or something, so that shopping application has to a lot of things right inside its source code. I mean to say inside its binary file, okay, or the artifact. So the artifact, let's say it can be a war file in case of Java. We call it as web archive. So inside this web archive, so we'll have a lot of services. Okay, when I'm talking about services, these are not individual. These are running inside a single file, like your UI service, some database processing service, account management service, inventory management service. So all are inside a single file. And that single file, we have to deploy in some application servers like your Tomcat, Jetty, we have Glassfish. Okay, so in this, this WAR file has to be deployed in some application servers like Tomcat. So usually Tomcat runs on 8080. Okay, and then if you are deploying the WAR, we should also give the no the exact endpoint. Let's say I've deployed Jenkins.war file inside Tomcat. So the URL would be IP address colon the port on which your Tomcat is running slash the WAR file that we have copied. Okay, so we cannot map it DNS right to IP and port combination. So that's why we use a reverse proxy like your Apache, Nginx, HA proxy. So we can opt for any reverse proxy, and then whenever a request coming to port 80, so we'll write rules in such a way that it listens on 80, and then it will forward the traffic to certain backend instance like IP and port combination and some endpoint. Okay, in this case, since I have 80 as the incoming port, so I can simply use IP address of this proxy, okay, to access my backend application. So since this is only IP, I can map it to a DNS name like your www.applicationapp.com. Okay, then the request will come to the reverse proxy, and reverse proxy handles the sending the traffic to the backend instance. So this is how we deploy the monolithic architecture, and this complete monolithic architecture has access to a single database. So this database is storing the information about your accounts, inventory, shipping, etc. Okay, so these kind of architectures are very simple to develop, test, deploy, and scale because there is only one file to deploy. Okay, so we have various pros and cons for this. The pros are it is simple to develop because there is only one binary involved, and for debugging and tracing, we don't have to rely on multiple services because there is only one instance running, and it is simple to test and less costly. But coming to the cons, the biggest one is it is difficult to understand and modify because the source code will be so huge. So it becomes difficult for the newcomer to understand the source code if he has to modify certain logic. And the thing is inside these services, right? So all the services are tightly coupled. That means that I should write all the services in one language. If I am deciding to create that application in Golang, all the logics, all the services should be written in Golang. That means that I cannot write a single service in a different language. Okay, so everything is tightly coupled, and they have higher startup and load times because the binary that we generate will be very huge. So it will lead to higher startup and load times. And let's say you have made a small change to a shipping logic, so you improve that logic, or else you fix some bugs. So in this case, what happens is you have to redeploy your complete application because your complete application is inside a single war file or a artifact. Okay, and scaling also will become difficult because individually we cannot scale a service. That means if the user traffic is increasing, I cannot individual scale the front end because everything is inside a single file. That means if I have to scale, I have to create one more instance of this application. That means that uh, the services which are running inside that war file will also scale equally. Okay, this is highly unintended intended. Okay, so these are the various the cons that we face in case of the monolithic architecture. So in order to reduce all these issues, right, so we have the microservices based architecture where we have individual services defined as a single microservice. Like accounting, it is a microservice. And inventory, it is a different. Shipping, it is a different microservice. Store front end, that is, it is a web front end. So it is running as a different microservice. And for the mobile devices, since we already have the application downloaded from the respective play stores, this particular application needs, data. So for that for giving that data, I should create an API gateway, so that the API gateway is responsible for creating some endpoints. Okay, if the mobile application wants to get the, the available product, it will contact the API gateway for fetching all such products. So API gateway is responsible for maintaining all the backend services information. So if the user is requesting for the account information, so this API gateway can forward the traffic to the a certain, backend instance and fetch that information for the user who is using the application. In this case, every service has to be run in a different host, or a, same host. And since these are not connected, or not inside a single binary, they have to talk over the network. That means that we have to expose them using the REST APIs. Okay, and all the connections here are the networking connections. And each of the service, we are creating a different database. So the reason why we are using different database for individual services is, let's say if one of the service is down, okay, so the other services will not get impacted. Okay, so we are creating high resilience in this case of microservices based architecture. Okay, and when we talk about microservices based architecture, we should also know about what are the downstream requests and upstream requests. Okay, so what are upstream requests is, let's say I have an application in which I have three different microservices: microservice A, a microservice B, and microservice C. Okay, so when, let's say that microservice A is nothing but your front end. Okay, and then this is, let's say, a middleware which is processing the user's request. And then the microservice B, let's say it is a database kind of a instance. So whenever users request something on the UI, so that request has to be processed by the middleware. And then if it is needed to fetch some data from the database, it will contact the microservice to C to get that information. So in this case, microservice B is acting like a upstream service for A. Okay, so this is upstream service. That means for B, A is the upstream service. For the C, B is the upstream service. Okay, similarly, here when the response is coming, so microservice A is the downstream for the service B. Okay, similarly, B will be the downstream for the service C. Okay. Now, it is also important to understand that microservices don't live in isolation. That means that we are not creating any separate, logic or something in case of microservices based architecture. Only thing is we are separating the concerns. Earlier, the concerns are inside your main application, because whatever happens to your application, it happens in your logic itself, because there is no networking component involved, nothing is there. All the issues are inside your application. But in case of microservices, so we have segregated the complete application into individual microservices. Now the main issues comes in the form of layers between the applications, that is the networking layer. So if the networks are lossy and unstable, so one microservice cannot make a reliable call to the B, and at the same time it cannot receive the response on time from the B. So that is what we call it as separation of concerns when we are moving from the monolithic to microservices based architecture. Okay, and now what are the other challenges that we can face in case of microservices based architecture? The first one is the security between the services. Here we are not implementing any kind of security between the services. That means that anyone can, see the traffic. Someone can intrude, and then they can, use Wireshark or any other utility to gain access to the traffic, and then easily they can decode what is going inside each and every microservice, because each microservice is now running in a different host machine. Okay, so not every microservice will run in the same host. That means that one microservice has to talk to the other microservice over the network. So if there is a network involved, obviously there are attacks. So that means that by default, if there is no security, so it is highly risky. And also service discovery. So what is service discovery is, let's say I have, a microservice A, and for microservice B, I have three different versions. Okay, v1, v2, and v3. And I'm also automatically scaling them depending upon my load. That means that it can go all the way up to version, replica 10. These are not versions. So these are replicas, one instance to third instance till 10 it can go. But if the microservice is not aware of how many backend instances are running, so it always tries to connect to only one instance. That means that it is always loading only one instance. So we need to provide a way where A will know how many backend instances are running. Okay, where exactly these are running, on what IP address are run it is running, on what port it is running. Because as I said, each replica, right, it may not run in the same machine. Okay, first replica might run in one machine, second replica might run in third machine. So if it is running in a different machine, obviously its IP address will change. So this A has to know the proper locations of the IP addresses, right? So that is called service discovery. So microservices based architecture should also implement this service discovery, so that if I have 10 replicas of microservice B, I can load balance the request. That means that first request will go to the first instance, second one will go to the second replica, like that. So this is called as a service discovery mechanism. And also tracing. So tracing is also a problem, because if you have 10 microservices in an application, if you want to know exactly where the issues are coming in between which microservices, the requests are delaying, or there are issues with the responses. Okay, so if tracing logic is not implemented, it is not easy to find. So in this case, what we'll do, we log in into each and every microservice, we'll see the logs and try to understand where exactly the issue is coming. Okay, so again, it is a very difficult process. And then coming to the logging, because earlier in the monolithic architecture, we have only one application, so there is only one log file. But here there are hundreds of microservices. If you talk about the Kubernetes cluster, so we have to have a centralized logging mechanism where I can see the logs without even touching the microservice. And also the testing part. Okay, and fault tolerance. So in case of fault tolerance, let's say if microservice B is not responding, okay, then A has to know, right? A has to know when it should time out. That means that A keeps on calling the microservice B for the response. But if A cannot time out the connection after 10 seconds or 20 seconds, so it will get stuck in this loop. That means that it will be in the unresponsive state. Okay, so if one of the microservices is down, so I should break that connection after certain interval of time, let's say 20 seconds or 30 seconds, so that A will receive that breakout connection information. Then it can immediately send that information back to the user. So here you're not blocking the user also. Okay, and the last one is monitoring. Okay, how to monitor your services, like what is the request rate, what is the response rate, how many successful requests that a microservice is making. Okay, how many of them are failed, how many of them are success. So all these, right? So these are various challenges if you're moving from monolithic to microservices based architecture. Okay, some of the challenges are addressed by Kubernetes, like your service discovery. Okay, but the other challenges cannot be directly implemented using Kubernetes. Okay, so there is only one way. Either you implement all these in your microservices, individual microservices, or else you delegate all these tasks to some other third party tools like service discovery, service mesh tools like Istio. Understood, guys?
Yeah,
Yep.
so sorry. Istio basically helps us to make the communication, right? So rest of other
Yeah,
tools we have combinationally we have to use.
correct. So we'll understand why Istio is actually needed, why we cannot use them in the source code. See, if I have microservice A and microservice B, okay, in the microservices logic, I can create certificates and then I can encrypt its traffic. Okay, but if I do it, I should manage my certificate rotation, renewal, etc. Okay, so if there are 10 microservices, I have to handle for all of them manually. And in order to use the service discovery, that logic has to be written in A. In this case, it has to be written in all the microservices. And logging also, that logic has to be written in the A. So that means that you are increasing your application size of A. Okay, and also for timing out the connection, so that logic also should be written in A. So that means instead of A worrying about running your actual application, it is also worrying about the rest of the things. So that will ultimately increase your size of the application. Because if we talk about Kubernetes, we want the pods as small as possible. That means that the container image that a pod runs should be as minimal as possible to reduce the attack surface, right? But if you are trying to include all these mechanisms, so obviously it will increase your size of the Docker image, right? Okay, then it is no there is no point in moving to the microservices based architecture then. Okay, so some of the challenges, as I said, without Istio also we can do. So the first thing is Eureka. So you might have heard about Eureka service discovery. So what Eureka will generally do is it will maintain a service registry where any service, right, has to come and register to this service registry. Okay, let's say that earlier I was using 3 microservices. Okay, and I've implemented one more microservice which is implementing some feature. So I will write some configuration in each and every microservice so that they first go and register with the service discovery. Okay, so whenever some microservice wants to talk to the other microservice, like B wants to talk to D, so first it will check with the service discovery where exactly your D is running, on what IP address, on what port number, whether it is there or not. Okay, so let's say if D is initially it is created and it is registered to the service discovery, but after some time D is having some issues and it went offline. Okay, now the service discovery knows that some of the services are not responding. Then what service registry will do? It will remove that microservice. So now whenever B wants to talk to D, right, immediately it will respond to the B, right? Service is not responding. Okay, you don't have to constantly, keep, connecting to D and waiting for some time, expecting that it will respond back. Okay, some part of these challenges are implemented in the microservices based architecture, but there are all these other challenges that we cannot implement. Okay, so these are the some of the disadvantages and advantages of microservice based architecture. The first one is the decoupled. That means that so every microservice is individually deployed. So that means that they are decoupled, and if any issue happens to one of the microservice, the other microservices will not have huge impact. Okay, let's say in case of shopping application, even if your wishlist service is not working, so you can still browse the catalog and place your orders, right? Because your UI is working, payment gateways are working, shopping cart application, the microservices is working. Okay, granular scaling. So granular scaling in the sense, now I can individually scale up my services. If I want the UI, front UI to be scaled, I can scale it. If I want my payment gateway to be scaled from 1 to 5, I can scale it without affecting the other microservices. Okay, and we can have better deployments because we are individually deploying them. Fault tolerant, because issues with one microservice will not impact the others. And the major advantage is no long term commitment to a technology. That means that, let's say, the storefront UI, designed that application using the old web technologies, probably like using HTML, CSS or something. Now I can upgrade that front UI to use the latest application stack like your Angular. Okay, without impacting the other services, because every microservice is now running individually. Even if you take one microservice and change its technology from Java to Golang, it is not going to impact the rest of the services, as long as you are maintaining the functionality in the new microservice. Okay, let's say I have Java based web app, so that is serving an endpoint like slash health and slash get user status something. So initially it is written in Java. Now I wanted to upgrade this Java based microservice to Golang. Okay, inside the Golang I'll also expose these endpoints like slash health and slash get user data. So these are the endpoints that other microservices will depend. So it doesn't depend on the language which you are using to create these endpoints, right? As long as you are processing the requests that are coming to these endpoints, so your other microservice will not care in which language you have written. So that is called no long term commitment to the technology. You can individually scale your applications, change their the language in which they are written without impacting your the complete application. Okay, Understood, guys? So the only con that we have is the networking issues. Okay, so if we can tackle the networking issues, so we can easily deploy our microservices based architectures. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so now let's talk about the service mesh and what is service mesh. Okay, so service mesh is all about service to service communication. So service to service in the sense here they are microservice to microservice based communication. It is not your Kubernetes service to service. Okay, that is entirely different. Here it is microservice to microservice based communication. Okay, so first one is the in the microservice based architecture. Let's say we are talking about the communication logic. Okay, the first thing is the communication logic, right? Because one microservice has to communicate to the other microservice. And when we are talking about the communication logic, so what all things we can include? So we can include the ingress and egress traffic. That means that we can control so the outgoing traffic that should go from microservice bay, and also I can control the incoming traffic. Okay, and then in order to encrypt your traffic, I can use the TLS communication inside each and every microservice. Okay, and also in order to get the matrices, so matrices in the sense how many requests are going per minute, that means that I can calculate the number of requests per second. Okay, and also if I wanted to calculate how many requests are failing and how many are requests are successful, I can also maintain that data here. Okay, and also I can maintain the rate. I mean, how many requests are going and coming, coming in. Okay, that those are all called matrices. Okay, and also other sort of matrices. Okay, and also the routing traffic. Let's say so there is a V1 version of microservice B and V2 version of the microservice same B. Okay, let's say this A wants to send the data to V1 only 30% of the time. Okay, and rest of the 70% of the time it has to go to V2. So now tell me, in order to include all these logics, okay, where should I implement? So this core logic is something known as business logic, which defines your main application. Okay, so now I wanted to have these added features like controlling the traffic, retrying the failed connections, encrypting the traffic, routing the traffic according to my wish. Let's say 100% of the time I wanted to traffic from A to reach to only V1 of B. Okay, and 0% to V2, and in some cases I wanted to route it in 50-50 percentage fashion, and also I wanted to calculate some of the matrices. So where I'll implement all this? Obviously it should be in the microservices, right? We are not talking about the Istio. Okay, imagine there is no Istio at all. Okay, then the developer is responsible for including all these features inside his main core logic, right? That means that we hired a Java developer, but we also asking him to manage all this, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Correct? Okay, so what could be the other alternative? So the other alternative is okay. Okay, so this is, yeah. This is the requirement. Now see the first way I can do. The first way is, along with your core logic, what I'll do, I'll include also the communication logic, which we talked about. I mean, all these features inside my core logic here. That means that core logic, that communication logic has to be included in each and every microservice. Okay, so along with this core logic, the core logic in the sense your main application logic, you're also including the communication logic that can perform your retries, routing, mutual TLS, matrices, etc. Right? So what is the downside of using this? The downside of using this is, let's say when you wanted to change this communication logic, okay, so you wanted to probably upgrade the communication logic, right? So in this case you have to redeploy your complete application in the sense complete microservice. And also, so you are increasing the size of your microservices. Earlier it was only running your core logic, it is now running your communication logic to give some extra features for you. Okay, so this is not the ideal way. So the next ideal way is, so you create a library. Okay, so library that can include or implement all these features for you: ingress, egress, retries, routing, circuit breaking, TLS matrices. You create a library and you use that library as a dependency for all the microservices. Okay, let's say this is a Java based application, all are Java based applications, let's say. So I'll create a another dependency in the form of jar, and I'll inject them into each and every microservice. So now what is the advantage is, if there is any change to the communication logic which I wanted to do, I will do it here, and I'll change only the dependency. So I'm not touching the core logic. Okay, and also there is no burden to the user because he can work on his application. At the same time, this communication logic, we can hire someone to do this for us. Okay, so now developer is also not loaded. So he doesn't have to know what the communication logic and how this is written. But the main problem is, if this microservice A and B are written in Java, right? So this dependency should also be Java, right? It's not like I can create a Python based dependency and then I can inject, because Java will not understand, right? And at the same time, we're also saying that a microservice doesn't have to stick to a same application stack. A can use Python, B can use Golang, C can use Java. That means that I cannot have a common library like Java that can understood by the Python, Golang, right? So this is also a failure. So this is, this can work only if individual microservices are of the same type. But here I'm saying Python and Golang. So these type of applications, right? These are known as polyglot applications, where I will have different language for each and every microservice. We call it as polyglot. For polyglot based applications, this sort of like dependency injection is a failure. Okay, now coming to the third one, using service mesh. Okay, so what is a service mesh is, we are these are all the communication logic, extra communication logic. We are completely removing them from the code, and then we are moving it to some extra component known as a proxy. Okay, so we call these proxy components as the infrastructure layer. Okay, so what are these proxies is, these proxies are configured to implement all this. Understood? So whatever is the communication logic that you wanted to implement, so you don't put it here. You create one more container, okay, which is running alongside with your main application container inside a pod. So have you heard about the multi-container patterns in pod?
Yes.
Sidecar container.
Okay, sidecar containers. So there are many patterns. One of them is sidecar. So you create a container for your main core logic, your application, and you let service mesh inject this proxy container for you and configure it for you according to your own configurations. Okay, so these proxies belong to the data plane. Okay, so these proxies inside each pod, so these belong to a component known as data plane, and the components which we use to configure these proxies. Let's say from A to B, I wanted to encrypt the traffic, mutual TLS. Who is going to handle this mutual TLS? It is not your core logic to core logic. It is through proxy. That means that from proxy to the other proxy. That means that if I take this as a pod, this as a pod, so pod to pod communication is not from core logic. It is from the proxy to the proxy. Now, I can configure proxy either to enable mutual TLS or to disable mutual TLS, right? Understood? So who is going to inject all these secondary containers? It is service mesh. Now, we don't have to care about the, creating a dependency like this, right? Only service mesh is responsible for injecting the containers. and properly configuring the according to the user requirement. And you worry about writing your core logic and relay everything to the service mesh. Understood, guys?
Yes.
So what
Yeah.
are the advantages you're getting out of this service mesh? The first thing is business and communication logic is now separated. So you work on business logic and let service mesh handle the communication logic for you. Developers can work solely on the core logic. And then since the developer is working only on the business logic of the application, so we'll get more cleaner and leaner Docker images. That means that our main application container, that means this will be completely light, right? Because we are not including any communication logic. And also using the proxies, okay, to for sending the communication. And one more thing that I have to tell you here is, when a traffic is originating from core logic, okay, when it wants to go outside, it will not go outside directly. First it will talk to the proxy, and proxy will redirect the traffic to the outside world. That means that the proxies are here intercepting your traffic, intercepting your main containers traffic. In this case also, in the receiving part, first proxy will receive and then only it will send to the core logic. That means that these proxies will know everything, okay, the the communication logic. Okay, so when we are using proxies to send the information, so the proxies can give you the rich set of matrices. Like the proxy will know whether the outgoing connection is a success or a failure. We can configure proxies in such a way that when you want to send the data to the core logic B through proxy, now what proxy will do, it will send the trying, it will establishing the communication to the other microservice. Okay, but we configure proxy in such a way that if the microservice B is not responding in 30 seconds, I can now time out the connection at the proxy only. Okay, so now I'll configure proxy in such a way that the timeout is 30 seconds. So it will wait for 30 seconds. Then if the other microservice is not responding, immediately this proxy will respond back to the core logic that the communication is not successful. Okay, instead of waiting for the infinite time, so I can break the connections through circuit breaking technologies. Okay, so in order to get all the rich set of matrices and then displaying them in the dashboards, so we have various dashboards like the Kiali dashboard, Grafana, Prometheus, Jaeger. Okay, and also we'll talk about the Jaeger and what is distributed traffic tomorrow. Okay, but we have a lot of user interfaces also to visualize the service mesh. And also we can do chaos testing. Okay, so have you guys heard of Chaos Monkey from Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay, so what this Chaos Monkey will do generally?
It will introduce some fault, and the system has to take care of to
Yeah,
heal those issues.
correct. So what it will do, it will randomly bring down a node, okay, or delete a pod. It can do all such chaos. Okay, so it can bring a node down and see whether your application is still running with the other nodes in the cluster, or else it will delete a pod and it will see whether your application is still accessible. Okay, so we can also do some level of chaos testing by injecting the delays and failures inside our in the application. Okay, and when I'm talking about this chaos testing and injecting delays, you're not touching anything in the core logic. You're only configuring the proxies. Okay, whatever changes you do to the mesh, you only do to the proxies. You're not at all touching the core logic. Okay, and also I can do weighted traffic and request based traffic. So what is the difference between weighted and request based traffic is, let's say there is only one version of A, microservice A, but there are three versions of the microservices B. Let's say V1, V2, and V3. Okay, so in most cases there will be only two. Okay, so we'll consider only two. So this is the old release and this is the new release which I want to test. Okay, so from A, I can direct 99% of the traffic to V1, and I wanted to test only 1% of the traffic to V1. Sorry, V2. 10%. So sorry, 1%. So I can configure the proxies at the A to always send 99% of the traffic to B and only 1% to V2. In this case, I'm only impacting 1% of the connections by testing V2. So if I see that V2 is not working properly, then immediately I can switch the traffic to V1 to 100%. Okay, so this is known as weighted based traffic. Okay, in case of the one second, uh, what is that name? Request based, yeah. So in case of request based routing, so I will only send the request to V2. Okay, so let's say there is a user is sending the data to V1 and sorry, to A, and A has to get the data from B. Okay, if there is no traffic management in place, okay, and if there are two versions, sometimes A will send the traffic to V1 and sometimes it will send to traffic to V2, right? Because it is called load balancing. That means that this user, sometimes he'll see V1 version of the application and sometimes he'll see V2 version of the application, but this is not desired way. Okay, so when you're testing something, you have to test it in such a way that the end user is not impacted. So if you are testing it in weighted based traffic, right, like this, the end user is going to see V2 in 50% of the connection. That means in 50% of the time he is going to see. In another way, what I can do is, when the user is requesting information from A, so I will also ask him if he can send some special parameters. Okay, these special parameters in the form of custom cookies, custom headers. If the user is not providing any of these, every time A will send the data to V1. Okay, so it will never send the data to V2. That means that user A will always see the old application, so he's not seeing the new one. Okay, but who is going to test your V2 application? So I don't want the user to test. So as a testing tester, okay, I want to send the data to A. But I want A to send the data to V2 version of B. But if you're not sending some extra information, it won't send. So what I'll do, create some custom headers and then I'll include these headers along with my request to A. Now A will read these headers and then it will understand that a user wants to test a different version of the application, that is V2 or anything. Then it will contact V2 and get that information back to the user. Okay, but where this header reading and traffic management is happening, it is not at the core microservice of the B. Okay, so we have two containers in A, right? App container and the proxy container of A. So all these configurations, right, I'm only doing at the proxy level, because main application container logic or the traffic is being intercepted by this proxy. So if I can create the proxy, configure the proxy in such a way that it can send the data to different instances depending upon the user specific parameters. Even this we are going to see in the demos. Okay, so now instead of end user testing your V2 version of the application, so I can send the custom headers. But who is going to have the custom headers information? Because I am creating the I know I've configured the proxies and I know how to divert the traffic, okay, using certain headers. So I'll define the headers. As a tester, I know which headers to send. So user the end users will not know that. Okay, understood guys?
But in this case, there will be the same code present in
Same
the
code,
proxy. Okay.
correct. Only proxies we are modifying. We are
Yeah.
modifying the proxies for the weighted traffic, like 90%, 10%, 50-50. If you don't want this mechanism, we call this as canary. So we don't want this kind of mechanism, we can go for request based routing. That means that a request is sent to a certain instance only when the user requesting it. Otherwise it will send to the old versions. Okay, so we call it them as dark releases. Okay, and also we also call them as A by B deployments. Understood guys?
Yeah, but in this case only we are changing the proxy
So
configuration,
not A
not
by B, it is yeah, A by B. Sorry,
here in this case we are changing only the proxy
proxy.
configuration.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
So whatever the configurations that we do to the service mesh using virtual services, destination rules, gateways, routes, so all these go and configure your proxy. The reason why it is changing the proxy is your main application container. Okay, if there is no proxy, right, it has to send the data outside itself. You cannot modify anything here. So if you have the proxy, so I'll configure the proxy for 90 and 10% traffic split, right? Using some configurations. Now, when the main data is or main request is originating from this app container, it reaches the proxy. Now, proxy's duty is to route the traffic outside. So now it will read its own configuration and it route accordingly, because proxy is ultimately the it is intercepting, right? It knows how to intercept. So if you don't configure the proxies using any of the istio specific component, so these proxies are nothing like your buffers. That means it will take your data and it will send the data. So there is no use of this proxy. Okay, but they'll give you certain metrics. Okay, so that is different case. But this kind of traffic management, if you are not configuring the proxies for that, so these proxies are nothing, right? They take the information and they send it out. They're just like your buffer.
I mean, in case of this kind of an interception is not there, there is no use of an service mesh. Is that the one you are conveying?
Correct. No, no, only for some of the features like traffic management. Okay,
Oh,
but if this main application container, if is talking to some B, and if it is not able to reach, or 90% of the time there is 200 response code. For the other 10% of the time there is 404 not found, or 500 internal server error. Okay, so for those sort of matrices, I can use proxy. But proxies are designed to do multiple things. So as I said, if you go back, so we can do all these, right? Service security, service discovery, tracing, logging, testing. Okay, in this, traffic management is only one part. Okay, understood, guys?
Yeah. And are we going to look more deeper into the proxy? For example, the how the packet is getting formed or how they are modified from
No,
the.
no, no, no. Those things we are not able. No, we are not going to see, because it is written in the source code, right? In the proxies.
Yeah, but sometimes if we want to troubleshoot, and that time it's better to understand like how the at networking level it's happening.
So that we are not doing. So we can use Kiali to see exactly where your issues are coming, but we are not, entering into proxy container and then seeing. We'll see, because earlier when I was, teaching ingress controllers, so I was also looking into the Nginx ingress controller and how it is, dynamically changing the configuration. Okay, but proxies I have not explored. I have to explore that as well.
Okay, yeah, no problem. And I
Because
will also looking from the API gateway point of view because in our organization we are using API gateway as a front end, and then from the API gateway the request will be
yeah,
forwarded
so
to
the
the.
yeah, so the thing is, if you enable Istio, right, so all these services will get a proxy. Okay, so even if you use API gateway, it doesn't use API gateway, so it is still the same. So it is going to monitor all the services for your application. Even for the API gateway, you can see the number of requests going in, going out. You can create the faults at the API gateway level only. So you can do all sort of things. It's still the same.
Mhm.
Let's say this API gateway. So let's say this API gateway has to contact a accounting service, and let's say there are two accounting services. Okay, accounting service V1 and V2. So you can configure this API gateway in such a way that it sends the 90% of traffic to accounting service V1 and 10% to the V2. Okay, let's say this API gateway has to talk about has to show some information to the user, and there is an old version and there is a new version. and currently you yourself are testing the v2 version. Okay, and for the rest of the users, they have to see only old version. So you can configure the proxy in such a way that, so when you contact the API gateway with certain headers or cookies, then only you will be able to see the v2. That means that the tester can test the v2 in the live cluster.
Yeah.
Okay, for the rest of the users, they are going to access only v1, but only the testers or the developers, they can send the real data traffic to the v1 v2 during the testing phase itself. Then once you know that v2 is working perfectly, then what you will do is you'll configure proxy in such a way that 100% of the traffic it will now redirect to v2, but still you'll put v1. Okay, for time being. Then if there are any issues in the real time, since v1 is running but there is no traffic, immediately you'll configure the proxy in such a way that 100% will be sent to this, and you'll mark it as 0 again.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the added advantages. So if you don't have proxy, you have to put everything in the API gateway. That means that, so for this 100% and 0% configuration, so you have to bring down your API gateway and then bring it up. That means that there is a downtime involved. But in case of proxies, you are just configuring them in the real time. You don't have to bring down the application and configure the proxy and bring it up. Okay, proxies configuration works in the real time, because proxies keep monitoring your the configurations. Whenever there is a configuration, proxies will be automatically configured. There are certain components in the control plane which does that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so using API gateway or without using API gateway, it doesn't going to change anything at your application level. Only thing is you are getting some extra features in the form of traffic management, matrices, mutual TLS communication. Okay, identifying the exact issues, creating the delays, chaos testing, all those things. Okay, yes. Okay, let's imagine a scenario like this. Okay, so the for this application, I have three different microservices. So there is a details microservice, hobbies microservice, and the photos microservices. Okay, so we have the Kubernetes services sitting in between each of them. Okay, like for the hobbies microservice, there is hobbies service. Photos pods, there is a photo microservice. Okay, so usually what is the the usual way of traffic management here? Whenever a hobbies microservice talk to the photos microservice, it contacts the photos service, and then service will load balance the request, right? Correct.
Yes.
That means that there are 5 instances of v1 and 5 instances of v2, the total 10 instances of the photos. So 50% of the traffic will go to v1 and 50% will go to v2. Okay, now imagine, even though if I have 5 and 5, I always want 100% of the traffic to go to v2 v1, and nothing should go to v2. So is that possible without using additional configuration? It is not possible, right? Because
Yeah.
for a service, it only looks at the 10 pods as a whole. So it will not know how to route the traffic only to v1 and v2, because service is nothing but it is a creating a routing rules inside the host machine. So these are not the running instances like your pods. These are just the configurations. Okay, so in order to configure them for this kind of an arrangement, like 100% and 0% arrangement, someone has to manually configure this service. So directly we can't do, so we can use Istio specific components like the virtual service and the destination rules. But we are not modifying the service object, we are modifying the proxies. So the proxies can now route the traffic to the backend instances according to your own wish. Okay, so let's say you wanted to send v1 100% to v1 and 0% to v2, and you also wanted to configure it in such a way that when a user sends a key value pair in the headers, like x session key as 22. Okay, so this is one a dummy header. Okay, so I'm using x session key because all the X are experimental headers. So these are not standard headers. Okay, so that's why I'm using X, and then I'm using some session key, some key, and I'm then giving it as 22. So when you give this, right, so what happens in this case is I'll configure the Istio's proxies in such a way that whenever a value is coming, it will create a hash value. Okay, and for that hash value, initially it is sending the traffic to V1. Let's say it is sending the traffic to V1, and if the same hash key, same number comes, and it will calculate the same hash value, it will always forward the data to V1. So that means that whenever user, when the user is sending the data using some custom header like 22, and initially he is assigned to talk to V1, always he'll talk to the V1, no matter what. Let's say some other user came, he is using some other value like 24. For 24 again, a hash value will be created inside the cluster, and according to this hash value, let's say he is assigned V2 version, right? And then that V2 version will always be traffic will always be sent to the V2. So this is known as forwarding the headers for consistent hashing. That means that I can test only V1 or V2 by directly sending some headers. Okay, so when you wanted to test the other version, you keep on changing the header values. Okay, but what happens if the user doesn't send this header? So he'll always be redirected to V1. So how this is possible? Because I'm configuring the Istio like that. If there is no Istio, a traffic coming to the service will always be load balanced in 50-50 percentage if it is running one version of V1 and one version of V2. If it is 20, if it is 2 and 1, that means that 66% will go to V1 and 33 will go to V2, right? Understood, guys? So these are
And
all traffic management. Okay, so we'll talk about this one. See, when a user is sending this header value, so this header value will be seen by this first microservice. Okay, then the header value will not be propagated to hobbies, and then it won't come to photos as well. Okay, so why I have mentioned everything at every microservice is whenever a microservice finds some headers like this, it has to collect those headers, and whenever it is making the upstream request to the other microservice, it also has to forward those headers to the next request. Again, when hobbies finds any headers like this, it has to collect, and then whenever it is making the outgoing request, it has to send those headers also. So this is known as header propagation. Okay, we'll talk about in depth about header propagation and why this is needed by Istio when we are talking about the other videos like the dark releases. There are many things. Okay, so for that header propagation is needed. Understood, guys?
yes.
Yes.
So though we have service mesh level rules we written, still service is required, like cluster IP something that is going to send a communication. But
Yeah, so
the intelligence,
I'm going to clear that as well now. Okay, so the thing is, let's say there is a microservice A, and there are for B there are two different versions, V1 and V2, and then there are let's say four versions of V1 running and one version of V2 running. So for accessing all these, I need a service, right?
yes,
So service maps all the instances because it doesn't understand the two different versions. It will take all the 4 and 1 as 5 instances. So whenever a request is coming to this service, okay, so there are 5 different IP addresses, right? These. So it will automatically load balance. Okay, there are 5 versions. So every time only 20% of the traffic will go to each IP. Okay. Now I'm talking about proxy at A. Okay, now I'm saying that I can configure proxy in such a way that okay, let's say 100% of the traffic will go to V1 and 0% will go to V2. Okay, if request is reaching service, service will do this load balancing. but I don't want this load balancing. That means that proxy should send the connection directly to the B without involving service. But in this case, you can ask me why service is needed in this case. Without service, you will not know the backend instances. Okay. Without service, you will not know the IP addresses and number of instances running. Okay, I'm saying 100% of the traffic should go to V1, but I should know, right, how many instances of running V1 are running. There are 4 instances are running. That means that I should have 4 IP addresses. From where I'm going to get all those IP addresses? I have to talk to the service, right? I will talk to the service, get all its IP addresses, and then I'll only send 100% of the traffic to the only designated IP addresses, the 4 addresses. Imagine there is no service. I'm just configuring proxy. 100% of the traffic will go to V1. But how do you know the endpoints of V1? How do you know if the endpoints keep changing? Like initially it is 4, now it is only 1. So without contacting your service, how will you load balance the request? How will you send the 100% of the traffic to V1? Right? That's it for this video, guys. If you like our video, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and joining our Facebook group. The links are given in the description below. You can also scan the QR codes being displayed in this video. And for any training requirements, you can join our Telegram channel where we post regular updates on our upcoming trainings. You can also WhatsApp us on the number being shown here. You can also drop us an email for any kind of training inquiries. Thank you.